Hey there, it's Kari here, and welcome back into the Integrative Health Simplified podcast. We are continuing the series about common health misconceptions. We're still in season 1. This is episode 18. And so I'm so glad that you're back with me for another episode, or maybe you just found me. Either way, so glad that you're here. I'm excited to talk about this particular topic today because I do feel like it's a common health misconception for sure. And I do hear it a lot in female circles, especially, of course. And so that is just that having a low libido is a common thing, and it's a normal thing. I think that's what people think, it's just normal not to want to have sex with my husband. And so that's something that I want to dive into in this episode and just to have a conversation around, because I think sometimes we just accept it and just kind of normalize it, even though it's not normal. It's very, very common, but it is not normal to not have any type of sex drive. So really, if you think about it, having a sex drive is actually an indication of health. And so when we don't have that, we should be thinking, okay, something is off. We shouldn't be thinking, oh, that's just the way it is. I just have a busy lifestyle. I'm just too tired, right? And I totally get it. Believe me when I say I do get it. However, we should have a desire for this. Maybe not every single day, of course. However, different times of the month, we definitely should, within a month span, let's say, we should have the desire for affection with our husband. So let's kind of dig into this topic and maybe uncover some things that are holding you back from having a healthy libido. And so I hope that this bringing up this topic really helps you to see, okay, there are some things I can do. I don't need to just resign to the fact that because I have young kids or because I'm really busy, etc., that this is just very normal. So I want to just first say that, of course, it goes without saying that there are seasons of life that just can be harder than others. If you just had a baby, if you're not getting sleep for a certain reason, all of those things are part of the whole picture. But for the most part, having a healthy sex drive for both male and female is just another tool that we can use to see how healthy our body is. And so I think it's a good question to ask. And I mean, a lot of times I do ask my clients, or they'll mention that's one of their main concerns is that they don't, which is good to see. Not good because I'm glad that they don't have one, but good that they realize that this is a problem. So this is because I often find that when we're in a state of dysfunction or low metabolic state, their sex drive is affected as well. So it's a pretty common thing that I see for sure. And so what I find is that a lot of times it's tied back to poor habits and imbalances in the body, because really our body is always talking to us through just variety of ways, but this is definitely one of those ways. And so, just from starting with blood sugar dysregulation that I already mentioned in a previous episode, just talking about, doesn't everybody have PMS symptoms that are super bad? I know if you listen to that episode, you heard me talk about some of these things, and it might seem repetitive. However, these are two issues that I see a lot. So I really wanted to address them in separate episodes. So blood sugar dysregulation definitely plays a part in this, not eating enough, like poor quality of food, gut imbalances, estrogen-like toxins that can really throw off our hormonal balances, like pesticides, plastics, pollutions. And then, of course, there's low thyroid. So one of the main things, though, that I find that people don't necessarily put two and two together is chronic stress. And chronic stress it might seem like, isn't everybody stressed? Isn't this something that's normal? Everybody has stress in their life, yes. However, I think that it's the ongoing nature of stress that I'm kind of classifying as chronic, day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year of just stress that's unrelenting, let's say. And so whenever you have this chronic stress, our body sort of perceives it like we're running away from a bear, right? We're kind of in that heightened state, right? And our body is getting ready for that. And so it does produce certain hormones like cortisol and adrenaline and things like that. And those can really crash your sex hormones. That's kind of the key missing piece. And I know we have stress from a lot of different areas. This could be work life emotional stress. This could be like an underlying infection that's causing stress, over exercising, under eating. Those are just some of the ways that our body can feel stress. Obviously, we have different stressors throughout the day. However, I think that there are some things in our life that just cause us to have this chronic stress that maybe just kind of goes under the radar. And so you got to think about it. When your body's under this chronic stress and it feels like it's trying to run from a bear, it's not necessarily going to be thinking, oh, I'd like to have some time with my husband tonight, right? It's like in survival mode. So that really plays a part in all of this. So what can happen is our body perceives that it's under stress from any of the dysfunctions that we previously talked about. And really the last thing on its mind is raising the proper hormones in order to reproduce, which is really why we feel the desire to have sex. And it just doesn't happen, right? When we're under that chronic stress. Simply put, chronic stress crashes your sex hormones, period. So again, when you're running from a bear, you're not going to be thinking about, your body is just not thinking about prioritizing this. And so I want to just kind of go through some things that you might not realize are actually suppressing your libido. So first thing is a low fat diet. So our sex hormones are actually derived from cholesterol, and that fat, and the fat that we consume that is easily able to be digested and absorbed. These are the backbones to sex hormones like testosterone that is needed to increase sex drive. So that's one thing. So not having enough healthy fats in your diet can really have a direct correlation to not having enough raw material to make the hormones that we need to really have hormonal balance, but definitely in the context that we're talking about as far as libido goes. Another thing that is very common, a lot of women are on birth control. I fully transparent right here. I mean, I was on birth control for 10 years, so I totally get it. But this is a big, big issue that I don't think people realize. Birth control can cause hormonal imbalance due to lack of ovulation, right? It's causing you not to ovulate so that you can't get pregnant. And so therefore, it's allowing estrogen to become dominant, and it's allowing the body to really be in further stress, throwing off sex hormones like testosterone and progesterone. Because really, whenever you ovulate, you produce progesterone, right? The progesterone raises. And so this really helps to balance out the hormonal levels in our body. And so estrogen doesn't come dominant if we have enough progesterone to keep it in balance. But whenever we're on birth control, that can be a huge issue of why we're seeing this sort of shift in our hormonal balance, and we're seeing the symptom of low libido, but that's really what's happening. So here's actually how it happens in our body. So birth control causes excess estrogen. Too much estrogen causes the liver to become sluggish. Then the liver doesn't have enough proper bile flow to get the toxins that it wants to out, the excess hormones like estrogen. And so then estrogen builds up in the body, and then that excess estrogen impacts testosterone and progesterone, which again are required for a healthy libido. They actually make those to be lower, right? And so again, we need this progesterone because it helps to provide energy to our body and a sense of well-being. And so really we want estrogen to be balanced because it's metabolically antagonistic with progesterone and testosterone. So if an estrogen's high, then automatically the progesterone and testosterone are going to be lower. And of course, testosterone is one of the main things that stimulates us to have a desire to have sex. So that is sort of, in a nutshell, how birth control can really deplete, I guess I should say deplenish, that's not even a word, our libido. Okay, moving right along. This might be an odd one, but I promise it. Let me just explain. So having a sodium level that is inadequate, or, you could just think of like not salting your food, not really eating a lot of salt. So salt, it really plays a big role, obviously, in mineral balance in general, but salt specifically works to calm down the stress response in the body and adrenal function. It just basically helps to give your body what it needs so that it works better. So it's not just pulling off an empty tank whenever you're calling on it to work properly. And so I think that it's really important to consider how this is working in the whole grand scheme of things, because we're trying to decrease the effects that cortisol has on our body. And so by having adequate sodium levels, that can really help to blunt some of these effects. And basically, it just helps also to give the body what it needs to run properly. And so it might just want to be something that you consider just looking at seeing how you can consume a little bit more salt. I think, again, this is like this in itself is a common misconception that we need to avoid salt and we should be on a low salt diet. Could not be further from the truth, honestly. So that's just another thing to consider in this whole conversation. An additional thought is eating conventional meat that is injected with like antibiotics and pesticides and hormones. This can, again, cause estrogen to be raised, and it can also destroy the microbiome, which obviously the gut has a relationship with so many things in our body, hormones included. And so this can really obviously not have a good effect on hormonal balance, which again doesn't have a good effect on your libido. I mentioned stress, but going hand in hand with that is just not resting enough. Again, if we are constantly in the stress state, which is more in our sympathetic nervous system, we want to try to get into our parasympathetic nervous system, which is rest and digest and calm. And I see so often that women have a really hard time going from one to the other. They just tend to want to stay in this always doing something, always needing to be busy, finding it really hard to rest, finding it really hard to just not do anything, right? Where a lot of women are just doers because we do have a lot on our plate. However, I think it's just as important. Like we're going to go hard, right? We're going to do what we need to do, but we need to go hard with resting. So I think that's a really big part of this whole conversation. And constantly being in that stress state, it causes nervous system dysregulation, which can have a huge effect on our libido. And so lastly, I kind of talked about chronic stress already, but the real big issue with chronic stress is that it circumvents the way that our hormones are prioritized to be made in the body. So there's this whole cascade of things that happen when it happens whenever our body is making hormones. And obviously it needs to make hormones for hormone balance. And so whenever we're under chronic stress, our body wants to release and needs to release cortisol, which is actually a hormone also. And so in that whole cascade of things, the hormones that we want to prioritize, which are progesterone and testosterone, are actually circumvented because our body is prioritizing cortisol over all of those. And so it's an actual physiological process that's just pushed to the side so that our body can prioritize this stress hormone cortisol. And so it's actually a thing that our body can't really do both at one time if it's having to produce so much of this stress hormone. And so it's not that your body's broken. Your body is very, very intuitive. It's not going to prioritize hormonal balance, sex drive, all of those things if we're constantly giving it signals and cues that we are under a lot of stress. This is the biggest reason why your hormones are off, honestly, is the stress piece of it. And so I know that might seem like, well, Kari, I just have a lot of stress in my life. And I understand that. However, I want you to think about what can you control. There are things that we cannot control. I can't control what my kids do. I can't control what my husband does. Sometimes I can't control my schedule. There's just things that are out of our control. However, there are things that are in our control. So just focusing on resting when you can, right? Going to bed earlier, putting down your phone, not necessarily needing to binge watch Netflix before you go to sleep. Like prioritize sleep at night. Make sure you're getting enough to eat during the day. Those things are huge when you think about getting your body out of that fight or flight mode into more of the parasympathetic nervous system. I promise those two things alone, just trying to help support our body and give it what it needs as far as nutrition and calories in a day's time, and then just trying as much as you can to realize that it's just as important that you unplug and prioritize rest as it is for anything else. So I think just making priorities where we can and what the things that we can control are super key in this whole conversation. So I hope this just encourages you, doesn't overwhelm you, that it really just gives you hope that, this is something that I can help in the long run, right? And I also want to just add in this caveat, in the whole priority that your body has, hormones are actually pretty low, simply because, again, whenever our body does feel very stressed, and it's in a very it's just kind of in a scarcity mindset. That's a good way to put it, maybe, that you understand what I mean. That's the last thing it's going to prioritize. So hormones are kind of last on the bus. So my whole goal for you is that you can look to really make your body feel very safe, very in abundance, meaning you're giving it rest, you're giving it nutrition, you're giving it energy via food. You're really taking good care of it as much as you can. And over time, it will start to kind of, how when you're stressed, you don't really breathe that much. You breathe, but it's very shallow, and you kind of tend to take shorter breaths. Whenever whenever you can sort of relax, you take a deeper breath, right? It feels really good. That's what your body wants to do. But whenever we just continue to just go, and just continue to not prioritize rest, it can't take that deep, full breath that it's looking for. And so hopefully that gives you a good mental picture of where you're trying to get to. And I want you to get there. It's totally possible, no matter what but Kari, but this, but that. No, you can make some of these things priority, because I'm going to be honest, you need to. Because if you have people that are counting on you, like your kids and your husband and maybe people at your job, whatever, we have some people counting on us, they deserve our best. And so to give them our best, we need to prioritize some of these things. And so it's not selfish. It's not any of those things that you're thinking. It's actually very, very needed so that we can do all that God's calling us to do. So I hope this just gives you some encouragement around this topic. And it's out there. It can happen, but it does take some intentionality. So I would love to continue the conversation. As always, reach out to me any way that is best for you. And I look forward to seeing and talking to you, and I'll see you on the next episode.